It's the world's longest-running science fiction TV series, and with Peter Capaldi now starring as the ever-reliable Time Lord, the BBC's Doctor Who continues to be popular with fans old and new alike. What initially started out as an idea in the mind of Canadian Sydney Newman, who was BBC head of drama in the early 1960s, went on to become a cultural phenomenon, not only in its native Britain, but also around the world. Doctor Who was first transmitted on BBC One on Saturday, November 23, 1963. The show continued to be broadcast until Wednesday, December 6, 1989, which saw the final episode of the story Survival broadcast to an audience of roughly 5 million viewers. To say that the BBC's interest in the series had lagged somewhat during the 1980s would be a bit of an understatement. And sometime after the broadcast of Survival, at the end of Doctor Who's 26th season, the Doctor Who production office was officially shut down, despite there being tentative plans for a 27th season. Other than a mini two-part story that was made for children in need in 1993, new episodes of Doctor Who remained off of British screens until the May of 1996, when a TV movie was transmitted. Originally intended as a backdoor pilot, the movie failed to find an audience in the United States, although its UK broadcast was well received, with over 9 million viewers. The series did not return properly until 2005, when Russell T Davies brought back the show with Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor, and to this day, Doctor Who continues to be a success with audiences around the globe. The show was no stranger to controversy, however, and in this special edition episode of Cutting Edge, we'll be taking a look at some of the censorship that Doctor Who has encountered during its 52-year history. A number of stories and programs related to Doctor Who during its tenure have been subject to censorship from various parties. For example, many of the 1960 stories that were shipped overseas to countries such as Australia and New Zealand were subject to numerous cuts for violence by the censors in power at that time. Cases such as these are well documented, particularly in Richard Molesworth's excellent book, Wiped, Doctor Who's Missing Episodes. As a result, a discussion of those particular cuts will not be covered in this edition of the show. What we will be taking a look at is the various edits made to Doctor Who by the BBFC in the UK, as well as edits that were undertaken by BBC management and the show's production team for a variety of reasons. Our first such case concerns the Fourth Doctor story, The Deadly Assassin, from 1976, which starred Tom Baker and aired as part of Doctor Who's 14th season. The climax of Episode 3 sees the treacherous Chancellor Goth fighting with the Doctor in the virtual reality world of The Matrix, and originally played as follows.
Finished, Doctor. You're finished.
At the time of its broadcast, the episode came under fire from Mary Whitehouse, president of the Pressure Group, the National Viewers and Listeners Association. Speaking of the scene in 1993, for the documentary More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS, Whitehouse recalled her concern about the effect the episode would have had on young viewers.
I can still see it in my mind's eye. The final shot of the episode was Dr. Hugh drowning. That's how it finished. And the image left in the minds of the children, and quite early in the evening, when you'd still got the youngest of children viewing. These sort of images, the final shots of the program, were the image that was left in the mind of the child for a whole week. I think it's extraordinary that people making a program of that kind couldn't have extended their awareness to the effect of what they were doing upon the children who were receiving it.
The late John Nathan Turner, who served as the producer of Doctor Who from 1979 until its cancellation in 1989, seemed unfazed by the attention the NVLA brought to the show, however.
Quite often I would pray that Mrs. Whitehouse had watched the programme and thought it was too violent, because it automatically put 2 million viewers on our audience figures.
A myth still perpetuates to this day that Doctor Who is a children's show, which is entirely not the case. Doctor Who was always made by the BBC's drama department, not the children's department. As former Doctor Who producer Philip Hinchcliffe, who worked on The Deadly Assassin, later stated,
I always felt that Mary Whitehouse thought of Doctor Who as a children's programme, and it wasn't, so she was really coming at the show from the wrong starting point. I remember thinking quite carefully about how long we could hold the shots of the drowning and all the rest of it, and thinking that was fine.
The story's director, the late David Maloney, thought differently, however.
In retrospect, I think maybe, and I had children of my own at the time, we were going maybe a little bit too far.
Following Whitehouse's complaints about The Deadly Assassin, the BBC took the drastic measure of editing out the closing moments of the episode on the original master tape of the story, and subsequent versions of the story now played in a slightly less dramatic form.
Finished, Doctor. You're finished.
For years, the story was only ever seen uncut on its original BBC transmission in 1976. However, the missing footage was later restored for its VHS and DVD releases by reinserting footage from off-air U-matic recordings made at the time of the original UK transmission. The BBFC passed the story uncut with a PG rating in July 1991, and it remains at PG to this day. Another Season 14 story, The Talons of Wang Chiang, also received cuts after its original broadcast. When BBC Enterprises first began releasing Doctor Who on video in the 1980s, stories were edited into an omnibus format, in effect, removing the episode breaks in order to create a continuous movie format Doctor Who story. The Talons of Wang Chiang was submitted in this omnibus format to the BBFC for a video rating in 1988. Although the story had aired uncut upon its original broadcast in early 1977, the BBFC's director at the time, James Furman, stipulated that cuts had to be made so as not to breach his rather bizarre policy on martial arts weaponry, which we've touched upon in previous Cutting Edge episodes. Early in the story, the Doctor is set upon by a group of Chinese enemies, one of whom is seen wielding a pair of nunchaku. The uncut version plays as follows. For the initial UK video release, the BBFC stated,
In fight between Doctor Who and Chinese henchmen, remove all sight of chain sticks produced and used in attempt to strangle Doctor.
With the cut version of the scene playing something like this.
Excuse me, can I help you?
The cut version of The Talons of Wang Chiang was passed with a PG rating and was the only version available to British buyers for the next 15 years, until the original episodic version of the story was released on DVD. The Talons of Wang Chiang was passed PG with all of its previous cuts waived on March 27, 2003 for
some mild violence and infrequent drug references.
By 1985, Colin Baker was playing the Doctor, and his second story, Attack of the Cybermen, aired in early January of that year. The story contains a lot of violence and horror for a family show that originally aired at 5:20 in the afternoon, and during post-production, director Matthew Robinson felt he had gone a little far in the violence department. One particular occurrence that the story is infamous for is a scene where the character of Lytton is tortured by the Cybermen. In a particularly sadistic moment, 2 Cybermen crush Lytton's hands in an attempt to gain information from him. As broadcast, the scene plays as follows.
You have wasted both our time and energy. I know that you plan to steal or destroy my time vessel. You will tell me how it is to be done.
Matthew Robinson had originally conceived of the scene in quite a gruesome manner, as he recounted in an interview on the Attack of the Cybermen DVD features.
We had a lot more blood and more cracking of bones and more of Litton's face getting really pained, but we took some of it out in the editing. I think it was okay. Looked at now, I don't think it was too strong what was left in. Definitely what we shot was too strong.
As seen in the final broadcast version of the story, there are no sound effects of crushing bones or visible sight of blood oozing from Litton's hands. But the sequence does appear somewhat jumpy as Litton's hands go from being unwounded to having bloodstains on them in a matter of seconds. Attack of the Cybermen was unavailable on home video until it was released on VHS in November 2000. Despite the story containing instances of decapitations, electrocution, gore, body horror, and the aforementioned crushing of hands, in what seems to be a huge oversight, the BBFC classified the story uncut with a U certificate for
mild violence, threat, and scene of injury detail.
The story was re-released on DVD in 2009 with the same U rating, although it had not been resubmitted for a contemporary BBFC classification. It is perhaps fair to argue that under current BBFC policy, Attack of the Cybermen should be rated PG in today's climate. In Australia, the usually more liberal censors gave the story an M15+ rating, the same rating as the Arnold Schwarzenegger film, Predator, which received an 18 rating in the UK in 1987. Another Colin Baker story from the same season, season 22, also received cuts by the production team before its UK transmission. In episode 2 of Revelation of the Daleks, Tassum Beaker takes her revenge upon the slimy Jobel by stabbing him with a syringe full of embalming fluid. The story's director, Graham Harper, had originally shot the scene with Tassum Beaker thrusting the needle into Jobel's body and then depressing the syringe. During the editing process, however, this was reduced to show only the initial stabbing and cutting to Jobel collapsing on the floor, which creates a slight continuity error in the final edit. Again, the uncut version of the scene has never officially surfaced, and the pre-cut version is the only version that was ever transmitted or made available on home video.
I am to kill you!
Get on with your work. Now enough of this.
I hate you!
Following further audio edits to remove a Jimi Hendrix song on the soundtrack for legal reasons, Revelation of the Daleks was released on VHS in 1999 and on DVD in 2005, and was passed uncut with a PG rating by the BBFC for
occasional, mild fantastic violence.
Paul McGann portrayed the 8th incarnation of the Doctor in the 1996 TV movie. In an effort to maximize sales in the UK, the VHS release of the story was originally intended to be released in Britain on May 15, 1996, the day after its TV broadcast in the US. Whilst the story aired uncut in the United States on its initial premiere, the BBFC in the UK decreed that edits had to be made to the film in order for it to receive a 12 rating, with the board arguing that the film contained
scenes of irrelevant violence which would have been unacceptable in Britain for any category lower than 15.
The BBFC cuts process had the unforeseen effect of delaying the VHS release of the TV movie by a week, and this cut version of the film was the version that was broadcast by the BBC on May 27th at 8:30 p.m., with the BBFC cuts having toned down the story's violent content for a pre-9 p.m. watershed time slot. The first cuts made occur during the scene where Chang Lee first meets the Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy in his 7th incarnation. Lee and his friends are involved in a shootout with a gang which climaxes with the Doctor being accidentally shot as he exits the TARDIS. The uncut scene plays as follows.
Fine, man.
Yeah, here, this style's okay. Yeah! Alright, got him! So good light. V, did you see that thing blow? Yeah!
Lee.
Amount of material was removed, along with a substitution of some footage, with the first BBFC cuts demanding
reduce gunplay in street scene to brief establishment only to explain accidental shooting of the Doctor.
Along with the removal of gunfire at the departing car, the sight of two of Chang Lee's friends being gunned down by the rival gang was also cut, as well as some threatening material as two gang members aim at Chang Lee before the TARDIS materializes, with the cut version playing something like this.
Bye, man. Yeah, here, this style, okay? Yeah! Alright, got him. Me, did you see that thing glow? Yeah!
After being taken to hospital, Dr. Grace Holloway and her team of surgeons attempt to save the Doctor's life, but due to the non-terrestrial nature of his body and the actions of the hospital staff, the Doctor apparently dies on the operating table. The uncut version of the scene plays thus.
Let me try something.
Massive seizure! Get that probe out of there!
Trying! Pictures in! Damn it! We're dropping off fast.
Just pull it out!
Come to me!
Get it out of there,
No
Grace!
good! I can't get it out of him!
Grace, he's flatlining!
The probe snapped! It's still in him!
Clear! 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 Give me 300! Clear! Clear!
For the VHS release, the BBFC stated,
considerably reduce hysterical panic in operating theatre as the Doctor dies on table.
I should be in the brachiocephalic.
Not unless this man's a donkey.
I am lost. Let me try something.
Massive seizure! Get that probe out of there!
Trying! We're dropping off fast. Come to me!
Get it out of there,
No
Grace!
good! I can't get it out of him!
Grace, he's flatlining!
I got lost in
He's
there!
flatlining! Clear! Clear! Clear!
One final cut was made by the BBFC towards the end of the film, when the Master kills Chang Lee. Again, the uncut material plays as follows.
Lee, I would never lie to you. I would only protect you.
For the VHS release, the BBFC demanded
Remove sight of neck break by the Master to Chang Li.
Lee, I would never lie to you. I would only protect you.
With cuts made, Doctor Who the movie was passed with a 12 rating after 66 seconds of cuts on May 20th, 1996. This was the only version available to British buyers on home video until the DVD release, which followed some 5 years later. However, the uncut version had been screened on television by the BBC as part of its Doctor Who night in 1999. For the DVD release, BBC Worldwide submitted the full uncut version of the film to the BBFC for classification in 2001, and the film was passed with all of its previous cuts waived with a 12 rating for
occasional moderate violence and some sci-fi horror.
When Christopher Eccleston took over the role of the Doctor in 2005, the show hit a couple of bumps along the way due to the series' violent and horrific content. The BBC received over 100 complaints following the broadcast of the episode The Unquiet Dead, due to the story featuring scenes of reanimated corpses. The BBC countered the complaints by arguing that Doctor Who was not intended for very young children, and that the horror and scares were counterbalanced by the laughter and bravery shown by the Doctor and his assistant Rose.
Doctor Who has never been intended for the youngest of children, and in line with the BBC's scheduling policy, the later a programme appears in the schedules, the less suitable it is for very young children to watch unsupervised. While the monsters may be scary, the content is carefully considered for a pre-Watershed audience. The programme sets out to balance the right amount of humour, drama and suspense.
The Unquiet Dead was later passed uncut with a 12 rating by the BBFC, after the BBC decided against releasing the episode with a lower rating.
We would have preferred a PG rating, but we were not willing to re-edit the episodes to obtain that. We wanted to release the episodes exactly as they had been seen on TV.
The BBFC were later mocked in the British press when the board classified the episode Dalek with a 12 rating for its UK DVD release, due to a scene where the Doctor electrocutes a captive Dalek. A spokesman for the BBFC was quoted as saying,
"We were concerned at the use of violence to resolve problems. The Doctor is a role model for young children, but he takes out his anger on the Dalek. A good role model should not use torture to satisfy his desire for revenge. It is not an acceptable way to deal with problems of power."
Once again, the BBC refused to cut the episode for a PG rating, and Dalek was passed uncut with a 12 rating by the BBFC for its moderate violence. An episode further along in Eccleston's series was subject to a small cut before its original transmission. The Empty Child saw the Doctor and Rose landing during the Blitz in London. Towards the end of the episode, the character of Dr. Constantine succumbs to the effects of alien nanogenes that cause his face to painfully transform into the form of a gas mask. The initial version of the scene featured the sounds of cracking bones as the mask slowly forced its way out of Constantine's face. But management at the BBC forced the Doctor Who production team to tone down the scene shortly before it was transmitted. As Doctor Who producer Phil Collinson was quoted as saying in the May of 2005,
"The whole sound effect was a lot more visceral. We watched it for the first time and said that was crossing over the line because it was a bit too horrible."
A reconstruction of the original intended version of the scene played here gives an indication of how sound effects can add greatly to the strength of a scene.
Mommy! You, my mummy.
All subsequent home video releases on DVD and Blu-ray feature the pre-cut version of the episode, and the original has never been transmitted or released to date. It plays as follows in its final form.
My mummy. me.
Although it is arguably a scarier episode than the previously discussed Dalek, the BBFC later passed The Empty Child with a PG rating for mild horror for a UK DVD release on September 20th, 2005. Individual episodes of Doctor Who were not the only aspect of the series that were subject to censorship. British law dictates that special features on UK DVDs and Blu-rays must be classified by the BBFC before release. As a result of this, some special features on Doctor Who DVDs have also been subject to BBFC cuts. One such example is the changes made to the documentary Remembering the Aztecs, as seen on the DVD release of the 1964 William Hartnell story, The Aztecs. Around 18 minutes into the feature, the actor Ian Cullen discusses how actors in the 1960s used to secure the opportunity for precious retakes if they fluffed their lines. As part of this discussion, he uses strong language on 2 occasions. BBC Worldwide had requested a U rating for the DVD features, but naturally the language was not permissible at such a low category. The BBFC offered the company a 12 rating, but the distributors refused, so the BBFC made 2 seconds of cuts so that the desired U rating could be awarded.
This work was cut. The cuts were made at the request of the distributor to achieve a particular category. To obtain this category, cuts of 2 seconds were required. Some or all of these cuts were made by substitution. Distributor chose to remove 2 dialogue uses of strong language in order to achieve a U, the category awarded to the related feature.
The cut version of Remembering the Aztecs was passed with a U rating by the BBFC on October 7, 2002. And is the only version available on all DVD releases of The Aztecs, with the cuts also carried over to the American Region 1 release of the same story.
Watching me fluffing, it was dreadful. As time went by, the actors learned that the only way to make sure that you got a retake, if you made a mistake or fluffed a line, was to say when you finished. And then they had to retake it, they couldn't possibly put that out. And by the time I got into Z-Cars, which was some years later, that was the standard thing. You would make a mistake. Sorry. You had to have the retake then. There's no way out of it.
Another example of Doctor Who special features receiving cuts concerns the DVD release of the Patrick Troughton story, The Moonbase. The surviving episodes of this partially missing story feature an audio commentary from various members of the cast and crew, moderated by Toby Hadoke. As originally recorded, Hadoke reads from the diaries of English playwright Joe Orton at one point, and the speakers go on to make jokes about the actor Fraser Hines, who played Jamie in The Moonbase. The commentaries were submitted to the BBFC with a request for a PG rating, but the BBFC demanded 47 seconds of cuts to remove some sexual references from the soundtrack. The rather specific cuts list sent by the BBFC to the distributors states,
After commentator reads from Joe Orton's diaries, in which Orton says there's a young boy in the programme who's worth looking at, remove subsequent reading from Orton's diary, I mentally undress him. I'm sure the BBC would be horrified if they realised that even a science fiction series can be used erotically. Also remove commentator's subsequent comment to Hines, so you feature Fraser in the Joe Orton diaries as an object of lust for one of the most famous playwrights in the English-speaking world. Also remove subsequent references to discussions about the possibility of Hines appearing in Entertaining Mr. Sloane, Hines saying he's glad he didn't because of the prospect of being chased around the rehearsal room by Joe Orton, and joking reference to Hines revealing this in his proposed autobiography entitled 49 Shades of Phrase.
In the end, the submitting company decided to remove all reference to the Orton diaries, which resulted in a total of 74 seconds of cuts being made, and there is now a lengthy gap in the commentary due to the removal of the aforementioned material. The affected section of the commentary, which we have edited visually for clarity, plays as follows, with the missing dialogue originally continuing after Fraser Hines discusses acting as a young boy, and finishing just before Hines starts to talk about the t-shirts worn by the actors.
Look, he's such a talented man, that's why he got to be script editor.
But you can be talented, but if you can't get a foot in the door, or...
Yeah, I mean, you'd been acting for a long time, so I mean, you broke into telly as a juvenile.
Yes,
didn't you, Fraser?
A little 10-year-old boy, yeah.
So let's get on with it. Okay. Right, we'll start on the main tape program. Right.
Do you want them all or just the main tank readings? The main will do. Right.
These T-shirts, they look all right, but they don't... Patrick Barr doesn't suit a T-shirt.
With the necessary cuts made, the commentary for the Moonbase was classified by the BBFC with a PG rating on December 4th, 2013. At the time this cutting-edge episode was made, the status of the commentary on the American Region 1 DVD is not known. Given the situation surrounding the cuts made to Remembering the Aztecs, and the extra costs that would be incurred in producing 2 different audio masters for the UK and the US, it is reasonable to assume that the commentaries on the US disc of the Moonbase are the same censored versions as heard on the UK release. It is worth noting, however, that the Region 1 DVD of the Moonbase was incorrectly converted from PAL to NTSC, resulting in the undoing of the extensive video cleanup done by the Doctor Who restoration team. As a result, the Region 1 disc cannot be recommended to fans of the show. Edits to Doctor Who have not always been done for reasons of violence and horror, however. In at least one instance, cuts have been made due to sensitive political reasons. The 8th series of the show saw Peter Capaldi beginning his reign as the 12th Doctor, and his 3rd story, Robot of Sherwood, was cut just days before its original UK transmission, on September 6, 2014. During the final showdown between the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood, the sheriff was originally seen to be decapitated and revealed as a robot. However, following the beheadings of American journalists James Foley and Stephen Satlov at the hands of Islamic State militants in August and September of that year, the BBC decided to cut the beheading scene in Robot of Sherwood out of respect. The cut version of the episode was also used for its American transmission, and is the version that was later released on DVD and Blu-ray. The scene in question now plays as follows, after the BBC had made cuts.
Doctor.
I know the whole castle's about to blow. You have long been a thorn in my side.
Oh, well, everyone should have a hobby. Mine's annoying you.
I'll have you boiled in oil at the castle by sunset.
Can we make it a little earlier?
Because that's a little past my bedtime.
In closing, Doctor Who fans have little to complain about when it comes to the censorship of their beloved series. BBFC cuts once made to certain stories on VHS are now restored on DVD, with the Doctor Who DVD range boasting incredible restoration work and exhaustive special features that are unrivaled by releases of any other television series. With uncut, pre-broadcast versions of stories that will never see the light of day, and only minor BBFC trims to certain DVD special features, Doctor Who's situation with regards to censorship is the best it has ever been for fans of the show. Fans can pick up either the British or Australian DVD releases to enjoy the show in its native PAL format, or the Region 1 DVDs in NTSC format, safe in the knowledge that they can all enjoy the same content, wherever they may be in time and space.
One job. Is that duct tape? One job. I wipe your slate clean.
What do you want with the kid? Come to take him home.
Wow. You're gonna kill us all, Mr. Bank.